Welcome to our replay of Lead Better. Lead Better is our free virtual leadership development sessions that are designed to help leaders pivot into their next. On this month's session, we will be covering part 1 of emotional intelligence. Let's jump in.
And we are grateful to be able to offer this month a conversation around emotional intelligence, and will be the second piece of our conversation. But before we jump into our presentation, I want you guys to put in the chat where are you guys joining from, and then also put in the chat why do you think emotional intelligence is important as for a leader? Why do you think emotional intelligence is important as a leader? So where are you joining from? Why you think emotional intelligence is important as a leader, and also if you put your role and name in the chat as well. And so I'll get my chat pulled up so I can see what you guys are putting there. I know we got a few people there. Just why do you think emotion? Then we'll give you guys a few seconds, and then to answer that question, we may have some time to get some of those responses. But up next will be Javonna Roach. Javonna Roach will be taking us into our next segment here as you guys are answering that question, or we'll just move forward.
So I'm going to give a little bit of a recap from last session, just so that you guys, even if you weren't here, you kind of know where we're at. So emotional intelligence is defined as the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions, and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. So, and that's a lot of big words. Actually, that's a lot of big words. But I think the key part to emotional intelligence is being aware of your emotions, so that you can lead others well. So all this information comes from a book, Emotional Intelligence. Neff and I both have our books right here with us. And you can purchase this book on Amazon. I think it's around $15. I didn't look it up this time, but I looked it up last month and it was around $15. With the subscription to the book, or not the subscription, but once you purchase the book, you get to take 2 assessments that comes with the book. You take one at the beginning and you take one 6 months after you read the book. And what you really want to see is that you've grown in the 4 pillars. And it gives you a score, like 0 to 100, of how you are at each one of the pillars. So last time we really focused on self-awareness and self-management. So more on the self. Today we're going to focus more on the social side. So social awareness and relationship management. So when we talk about each one of these pillars in the book, what you'll see is that there are about anywhere between 10 to 20 strategies that they give you. And we focus more on 2 to 3 of the strategies. So Neff and I are going to be talking about 2 to 3 strategies today. For self-awareness, which was the first one, and that was kind of the one that I kicked off, what we talked about: observe the ripple effect of your emotions and get to know yourself under stress, which I think is a key, specifically with where a good amount of us work. We experience stress every day, and getting to know yourself under stress is really important. And then self-management. Neff spent a good amount of time talking about self-management. Today, Neff is going to kick us off with social awareness, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about relationship management. And we're going to focus on 2 to 3 key strategies around self-awareness and relationship management. So in the comments, there's going to be a poll, or not in the comments, I'm sorry. There's going to be a poll. If you look at the bottom of your screen on the right, there's a little triangle, square, and circle. You can click that. Ashley put a poll in there for you. What pillar of emotional intelligence have you been working on since the last Lead Better? If you didn't join us for the last Lead Better, that's 100% okay. But of the 2, self-awareness and self-management, which would you say are the 2, or of those 2, that you've worked on the most? So you can put your answer in the poll that Ashley just posted. All right. So we're going to kick off we're going to kick off social awareness first, and Neff's going to take us a little bit, we're going to dive deeper into social awareness together.
All right, thank you, Javonna. So, as she said, we're going to talk about two different things today, and the first one's going to be over social awareness. And so, to start off, we want to define what social awareness is. And simply put, social awareness is your ability to accurately pick up on emotions in other people and understand what's really going on with them. And so, it's really what's being said, what's not being said, being able to take certain cues from body language, from what people are expressing, and being able to drive conversations, drive decisions, and be able to create trust with other people. And so the book, in every chapter, in every pillar, they give a certain number of strategies that can help you be able to have a better understanding of what that looks like in your life, at work. And so there's a couple strategies that this book goes over when we talk about social awareness. And there's a list on that screen that you can probably screenshot on your phone if you want to kind of keep them and you want to look some of these up at a later time. Or if you get the book, you will probably come across this at some point in your reading. And all of them are really, really good. They're really good tools. They're really good things to dive into and be able to practice. I've had several leaders go through this course, and a lot of these have been really helpful for them to be able to gain a better understanding through these four different pillars as to how it pertains to emotional intelligence. And so today we're going to be talking about two different ones. The first one's going to be watch body language, and the second one is going to be practicing the art of listening. And so when we talk about watching body language, there's this statistic that says that when it comes to communication, 55% of communication is actually non-verbal. 38% is vocal, and 7% is only communicated through words. So that's a huge difference between speaking and nonverbal communication. And so that 55% really falls in body language, and is being able to understand those cues that we as humans give off. It can be silly things as blinking often, it can be as fidgeting, it can be tapping your foot, it can be scratching your head. There's so many things that if you start watching people, you will start to realize that there's certain things that when they go through different situations, when they find themselves under pressure, they start to exhibit some of these behaviors. And eventually, over time, you're able to pick up on these things. And so, when you're having conversations with people, you start to understand them a little bit better. You start to understand what are the things that are stressing them out in that moment. You start to understand how your conversation is sitting with them. And so, I think it's super important that we understand that we may speak hundreds of words, but that's not the most effective way sometimes to get our point across. And sometimes, really, we have to watch and really see what the other person is doing to really understand how we're going to deliver the information that we're about to deliver to people. And so I think it's something that we often overlook. I think it's something that we don't sometimes think about, especially as we move up into leadership. And maybe for younger leaders, you think, well, I just have to boss people around and I have to tell them to go do this and they have to fulfill this task. And it's because I said so. Um, and you don't really take the time to stop and really look at your team members that might be working under you to see what are the signs that they are displaying that might be saying something that goes against what their actual words are saying. Um, I was talking to a client recently, and we were talking about this, and I said I think we've been conditioned when people ask us, "Hey, how are you doing?" The automatic response is, "I'm doing great. How are you doing?" And if you really think about it for a second, it's typically 99% of the time the response you're going to get, "I'm doing great. How are you doing? How's this going?" And that person could be struggling to pay bills. They could be worried about having food on their table. They could be worried about their kid in school being bullied, not passing. They could be, having a hard time in their marriage, but their automatic response is, I'm doing great. How are you doing? And if we do not pay attention to those behaviors that we display, we can sometimes miss out on opportunities and conversations to really connect with people. And oftentimes it happens because we are so caught up in our own doing and the things that we need to do and the things that are assigned to us. And we forget to really be present in the situation and with the people that really need our attention. And so that's going to bring us to our second point, which is practicing the art of listening. Practicing the art of listening, as simple and as basic and elementary as that may sound, they say that only about 10% of the population actually gets education on listening. And some research done a couple years ago actually shows us that we listen at about 125 to 250 words per minute, but we actually think at about 1,000 to 3,000 words per minute. And so our brain thinks way faster than what we can actually process things physically. And so oftentimes that's why you probably find yourself like stumbling over your words because you've thought about 100 times more the words that you're actually going to say. And so it's interesting just at looking at the data of what that actually looks like. And listening is not just about hearing words, it's about listening to the absence of words. So it's not always about what's being said. Sometimes you have to listen to the silence that exists when you're having conversations. Being able to, again, back to the body language, being able to catch the cues that people display and the behaviors that they display during different situations to really understand what's really going on. And listening, they say most people can't go more than 10 seconds without silence in a conversation. It's just people become uncomfortable. And if if you've never tried it, just go and try it. Go talk to somebody and then just sit there for a second and don't say anything. And either you or the other person are bound to say something because there's this awkward pause. And it just goes to show that we feel like we always have to say something, but oftentimes we can learn more from listening to somebody else than speaking. And oftentimes people just need us to listen. And as leaders in a business or an organization, wherever it is that you find yourself, you need to be able to know when is the time to talk and when is the time to listen. And just because you may hold a higher position than somebody else, it doesn't give you the right to overtake a conversation. Even if you know the answer, even if you know more than the other person, it still doesn't give you the right to overtake a conversation. There's a lot of power in the ability to be able to listen, and there's this respect that comes from people when they know that they can come to you and you're going to listen even if you have something to say. There's a part of self-control that really comes in to play in that situation, and a lot of us just simply lack that self-control to be able to bite our tongue and not say something and allow somebody else to speak, especially when what they're saying may not sit right with you. Maybe it goes against what your thought process is. It may not be something you agree with, and you might be, really wanting to say something or try to justify your position. But there is always something that any of us can learn from somebody else. And if we as leaders cannot understand that concept that there is something to be learned from everything and everybody, we're never going to rise to a higher level in our leadership.
That's interesting because I feel like the art of listening as leaders, I think most high level leaders, I know it's something that they struggle with.
Yeah.
And then even just watching body language, I think, that statistic, would you say 55%
Mm-hmm.
of
It's nonverbal.
is nonverbal? That's interesting. That's a really good statistic.
Yeah.
So if you take what Neff just said with social awareness and what we talked about last time with self-awareness, and self-management, and you kind of roll those all up, kind of comes to this last pillar, that relationship management side. And actually, I worked on this a lot today, before I came here. And I read through a lot of the relationship management stuff. I've read this before, but I read it again to kind of refresh my memory. But I really like the definition. So relationship management, what is relationship management? Relationship management is the ability to use your awareness of your own emotions and those of others to manage interactions successfully. So, one thing I think about when I think about that definition is managing interactions successfully, and how often I screw that up as a leader. Like, I know as leaders in a business where there's chaos, which happens daily, that we're kind of on a mission. Like when I think about my day, I'm like, okay, I'm on a mission. And sometimes I don't look at body language. Sometimes I don't slow down um, enough to listen well. And so that means that I don't manage my interactions successfully.
Yeah.
And so that's something that when I read that definition today, I was like, man, that's something that I need to work on as a leader, is managing interactions successfully. And really, the worst part about it is I feel like when I end the day, I look back over conversations or interactions I've had, and I'm like, yeah, I think I managed those successfully. And then the next day I find out that I didn't manage those successfully because somebody's feelings got hurt. I didn't spend enough time with them, or I wasn't really listening. And so when you take all those other pillars, that's kind of what rolls into that relationship management side. And what that does when you think about emotional intelligence is it helps with clear communication and handling conflict, which as leaders, that's something that we're doing daily. That's one thing that people are asking for daily. If you were to ask leaders in our organization what's one thing they want, they tell me clarity, clear communication all the time. That's what they want. And then the other side of what necessarily they don't want to deal with is conflict, right? Because conflict is hard. Conflict is it's like, oh, I have to have a hard conversation today. And so I think there's some practical tools and strategies that they give us in the emotional intelligence book to do this relationship management better. And I put like a practical tool in here is connection. How can you connect with those around you? So when we're in a business and we're dealing with 180 people, or we're in one organization and we have 90 people, how can you really work on relationships with people? I have kind of I'll tell y'all, it's a secret. So I'm sharing a secret with y'all today. I try to find one way to connect with every person on my team. One way, just one, because I can't connect with them in every way. I can't know everything about every single person. And as we've gotten bigger, I think that's been a thing, right? It's like, how do I get to know people and how do I manage relationships? Well, I try to find out one thing. So I put a couple of areas that you can connect with people on, and I just wrote these down, so you might want to jot these down. Working out, fitness. So on our team, we had somebody who created a channel on one of our communication. We use Slack, and they created a fitness channel. And there's people in that group that I probably would never have known. Like, they're like avid, people who work out, or they meal prep. And so it's helped me to create connections with people that I didn't have connections with before, because I like to work out and they like to work out. So when I see them in the restaurant, I can say, hey, I saw that you posted on Slack the other day your meal prep. I'd love to learn how to do that. So that's a connection piece with that person. Sports is another way to connect with people. I know for sure, like when people come in our restaurant, like, we're supposed to create that emotional connection. Like if they have an Astros shirt on, we're asking them, how are the Astros doing? So I think sports is another good connection piece. I put movies. People like different genre of movies. With multiple team members, that's been a way that I've been able to connect with them. Music. Okay. I'm just letting you know, I'm not a music person unless it's probably Christian music. That's what I listen to most. But like, I think about Taylor Swift, right? Swifties. everybody's a Swiftie. That brings people together. That's a connection piece. And so, practical tool for relationship management, the first thing that I try to do with anybody that's on our team that's new or I don't know, I try to find one way to connect. And that's just, I think that's helped me throughout my leadership, is finding that one way to connect. Now, to get to kind of the strategies, I have 3 strategies that I want us to focus on this time with relationship management. The first one is acknowledging the other person's feelings. The second one is when you care, show it. And the third one is tackle a tough conversation. Now, if you don't have your pens ready and you didn't get anything else I said, there's a couple things that I want you to get. One, find that one connection piece. But when I get to tackling a tough conversation, I have 6 steps to tackle a tough conversation, and you might want to write those down. But I'm going to start with acknowledging the other person's feelings. This is a great place to start in any conversation. This is a great place to start with any person on your team when you walk into work that day. I'm telling you, I've struggled with this one for years. If I walk in the restaurant and I see somebody crying, I'm walking the other way because I'm like, what am I going to say to them? Like they're having a rough time. I don't know how to handle that. The reason I did that was because I didn't know how to handle my own emotions. And so if I walk into a situation where I'm like, somebody's upset or crying, I have a hard time dealing with that on my own. And so it was always hard for me to connect with that person. But ultimately, all you have to do is ask them how they're doing. Hey, I see that you're having a rough day. Like, tell me what's going on. And if you're the cause of those emotions, that's a whole nother issue. But I think acknowledging in that moment, like, hey, I'm so sorry that I made you feel this way. Acknowledging the fact that you caused them to feel a certain way, even if that wasn't your intentions. Like, a lot of the times somebody says, hey, you upset me. And your first response is, well, I didn't mean to do that. That wasn't me. I didn't, that wasn't, but we don't say, hey, I'm so sorry that I made you feel that way. So if you're dealing with somebody else's emotions, first thing I say is, say, I'm sorry that I made you feel that way. Like, start with acknowledging the fact that you made them feel a certain way. And I at the end of the day, I get it wasn't your intention, but you did it. But in that moment, when you're acknowledging the other person's feeling, ask them, say, is there anything I can do to help you? And really listen. Listen to what they're asking for you to help them with. I thought a key thing they said in this section was repeat back to the individual what they told you. I don't do that well because a lot of times I'm thinking in my head of what I need to say next. And so I listen to 10%, 20, maybe 30% of it. And so that's something I'm really working on, is like repeating back to them what they said, because then that lets them know that you really listened to what they said. And then the fourth part to that is just show that you care. Hey, I care about you and I want to help you. And I want to help you get through this. And you know what that does is that builds a relationship with that person, because they know that you care about them more than, them coming to work every day and being a part of your team. Like, the care is deeper at that point. So the first one's acknowledging the other person's feelings. The second one is when you care, show it. So I'm going to be upfront. My love language, my number one love language is acts of service. And so for me, like, if you want to show me that you care about me, do something for me. My husband knows that really well. I'm like, don't tell me you love me. Show me you love me. Do the dishes, do the laundry. And so when I care about people, a lot of times that's the way that I show care, is I'll do something for them. But I don't verbalize how much I care about them enough. And so I think that's been a struggle for me. And one thing that I actually asked my leaders to do is to take the love languages test so that I can know how to show them that I care about them. Like, that's a key thing to do. But I think showing people you care about them and you care about the work that they've done is so important in relationships. And so, and y'all, this is really transparent, which I feel like I can be with you guys. But sometimes I'm like, well, they just did their job. Why do I have to tell them that they did a good job? Like, you just did your job. So good job. That's what we pay you to do. But I know that telling people that they did a good job goes a really long way. And so I made a list. I made a list of like ways to show people you care about them. So there's been different instances in my leadership, different instances in my life where I've had to show people I care about them. And I feel like I used to do a little bit better job, and I've kind of gotten away from it with all the crazy that goes on. But showing people you care about them doesn't have to be this big grand gesture. And I think that's sometimes what we think. We're like, especially in our organization, we're like, okay, we got to get a taco truck, or we got to spend this amount of money. Really, all you need to do is write a note or send a text. Like, that is a basic way. Hey, I saw that you did this today, and I really appreciate that. A phone call. A phone call. Have you ever received that phone call out of the blue where somebody called you and they just said, hey, I just wanted to call you today to let you know that I really appreciated what you did? Like, that's basic. In our minds, we're like, what? No, but they took time out of their day to actually make that phone call. A small gift. I don't know about you guys. I love me some Target. That dollar spot gets my attention. A lot of times I walk into Target to buy something else. I get in the dollar spot and I'm like, oh, this would be a really great gift for so-and-so. And so I purchase stuff. I actually have a little gift closet. I purchase stuff that is little gifts for me to give, whether it's a mug or a little notebook or just some little knickknack things here or there. Hey, I know that this person loves candles. I bought them a candle today. So I have a little gift closet that I have created to show people that I just care for them. So a small gift. What about taking somebody to lunch? Like, I know that sounds crazy. Like, oh my goodness, we're going to take an hour out of our day and we're going to spend $40 on that person. But that really shows, like, that's the gift giving side of love languages. And that's also the quality time side of love languages. And so just even saying, hey, like, I appreciate what you've done. I've seen that you've done something really great. I'd love to go to lunch with you. I mean, that would even shock some of your people. I guarantee you. Say, hey, let's go to lunch. Or we might not be able to go during lunch because it's lunch rush, but 2:00, we're going to go to a late lunch. So taking people to lunch. Bringing them their favorite coffee or drink. Like, I know how many of my leaders love a good Starbucks. I'm not a big Starbucks person, but I see sometimes leaders, they'll come in with a little Starbucks caddy and it has 4 drinks in it with other team members or leaders' names just because they care about them and they're so thankful for them. Like, bringing them their favorite coffee or drink. Okay, so in the comments, I wanted Ashley to put this in the comments for us. What are some ideas or things you've done to show someone you care and it's paid dividends for your relationship? Put that in the comments. And the reason I want this in the comments is because we're always looking for new ways and ideas to show people that we care about them. And these are really, really small things, y'all. Like a sticky note. I'll tell y'all a fun story, a small fun story, but I was having a rough time. And I had some friends at the time who sticky noted my garage door with 100 sticky notes of how much they appreciated me. And they did it before I got home. And I still have those sticky notes. I like piled them up and I kept them because, I mean, a pad of sticky notes costed them probably $1? And they just put small things about me that they appreciated. And it was 100 things that they appreciated about me. And that didn't cost them a ton of money. It probably cost them an hour to come do it, but it's something I'll never forget. That somebody did that for me. They put 100 things that they appreciated about me on my garage door. And I came home to that. So it doesn't take a crazy amount of money. It doesn't take a crazy amount of time. All it is that small grand gesture of like, hey, I care about you. I think you're awesome. And I that I care about you. All right, the last one, tackling a tough conversation. So Ashley's going to put a poll up. How long do you wait to have a tough conversation? Same day? 1 day later? 1 week later, or 1 month later? I'm interested to see this poll. Can you pull it up for me, Neff? So, okay, it's in the, if you look for the triangle, the square, and the circle. Okay, so how long do you wait to have a tough conversation? Same day, 1 day later, 1 week later, 1 month later? Anybody else got any votes? I got 1 day later so far. Ooh, two votes for 1 day. And 1 day later, 3 votes for 1 day. That's awesome. So I think you have to know yourself on this question. For me, if I have a tough conversation in the moment, I let my emotions take control and things go south really fast. And so typically which we have 6 votes for 1 day later. I am a 1 day later person as well. Now, if it's a small, non-hard conversation, like it's, a somewhat hard conversation, but it needs to happen in the moment, I'll do it. But most of the time I wait till the next day, because at that point, and I think that's a good rule of thumb for 90% of people, is wait till the next day, because you've let yourself come off of that emotional, like your body actually puts out hormones and that kind of make you crazy in the moment when it comes to tough conversations. And so, like, I think a day later is not bad, but I will tell you, a lot of leaders wait a week, a month, and they let things go by. And all that does is tear up a relationship. So this is where I wanted you to have your pens ready. I got 6 steps to navigating a hard conversation. All right. The first one, start with an agreement. Okay. This can be as basic, and I'm giving y'all this is some more like, some little tidbits of how Javonna handles things. Like, I start almost all hard conversations in the same way. And the agreement can be, hey, I just want you to know this is a really hard conversation for me to have with you. Like, be upfront that this is going to be a hard conversation. It can even be an apology on your part. Like, you might have to apologize of like, hey, I should have had this conversation with you 2 weeks ago, but I just couldn't do it. It can be an I care about you statement. That's how I start almost all my hard conversations, because ultimately at the end of the day, in any hard conversation, I care about the other person. I care about them enough to have the conversation. And so one of my leaders actually brought this up to me the other day. She's like, oh my gosh, you do that. Every hard conversation you have, I start off with like, I care about you and I just want what's best for you. And so I'm going to have this conversation with you because I care about you. So that they know, they're prepared. Like, that's the agreement, is you start with an agreement. Second is ask the other person to help you understand his or her side. Okay. You cannot come into the conversation understanding their side fully. And so at the end of the day, in all hard conversations, people just want to be heard. People just want to be heard. Like, they want to know that you hear what they're thinking inside of their head. And so say, hey, I want you to help me understand why you have thought this way or are thinking this way. Number 3, resist the urge to plan a comeback or rebuttal. Oh, I struggle with this one so much. Silence your inner voice. Like, you cannot defend yourself in this moment. Like, that is what people don't want to hear. So you have to silence your inner voice. Don't be planning what you're going to say next. Like, I wrote on my notes that I'm looking at in front of me, and I wrote this in all caps, for sure an area of opportunity for me. I do quarterly reviews with my leaders, and I ask them a question. The last question I asked them, Neff knows this, is what are some things that I need to work on? And that's their space to literally say anything that they feel like I need to work on as a leader. And when they're telling me things that I need to work on, what's going through my mind is, okay, well, this is why I do that, or that's why. And I'm saying all these things in my mind, and sometimes they come out. And one thing that I have I've asked my operator, I'm like, hey, give me feedback. And he's like, you need to receive feedback better. Stop giving them all of the reasons why you do what you do. Just let them say it. And I'm like, okay, that's something I need to work on. So resist the urge to plan a comeback. That's number 3. Number 4, help the other person understand your side too. I call this communicate clearly and simply. Do not talk in circles. Do not talk in circles. And as leaders, we struggle with that. And I would say, especially when the hard conversation is somebody that we have to fire. Like well, this happened and that happened, and this is the other thing, and that, no. Why are they getting fired? Or why are they in trouble? You don't need to tell them the last 6 months, all of the bad things that they did in that hard conversation. You need to focus on the one reason you're having the hard conversation. This is why we're having this hard conversation, not the last 6 months of activity, which I know we do as leaders. So help the other person understand your side, communicate clearly and simply. Number 5, move the conversation forward. Find common ground, even if you still disagree. And sometimes in hard conversations, you're just going to disagree. And you might even have to say in that conversation, hey, we're going to agree to disagree on this. And that is okay, because we're different people and we see things differently. But you got to move the conversation forward. And then number 6, keep in touch. And I think this is a key piece. Sometimes we have hard conversations and then we don't see the person for a week. And it's like, well, we had that hard conversation. They're fine now. Everything's fine. Well, it might not be. So after you leave the conversation, check in with the other person as you move forward. Sometimes for me, when I have hard conversations, that same day, I'll either call or text the person. Hey, thanks for having that conversation with me today. Are you feeling okay about everything? Or, Neff knows this because we've had many hard conversations in our tenure together. I call him and I'm like, hey, I just want you to know I really do care about you. Like, that wasn't something I just said. Like, I really do care about you and I want us to be able to move forward. And so I think that conversation had to be had. Are you still feeling okay about it? Like, are we past it? Are we good? So make sure that you keep in touch. Remember that you're only half of the relationship. So you might be good on your 50%, but that other person might not be so good on their other 50%. In all tough conversations, you as the leader have to take the high road. Not be defensive, and you have to remain open to other people's perspectives. And I think in all hard conversations, that is the key, is you take the high road, don't be defensive, and remain open. And ultimately, if you can do those tough conversations well, I think you can manage relationships really well. Yep. And as leaders, I think that's what we're called to. We're called to making sure that we manage our relationships with our team well, with our other leaders well, so that we can push the business forward. And at the end, like, that's what emotional intelligence looks like, is you having great relationships with the people that you work with, having great relationships with your spouse, having great relationships with your kids. And that's what emotional intelligence leads us to, is those great relationships with other people. All right, Alex, you can take over at this point.
Thank you so much. I think we've got, next up is a video to be queued up by Ashley. Yes.
Hi guys, my name is Miranda. I work at Chick-fil-A. Hi guys, my name is Miranda. I work at Chick-fil-A Garth Road, and in my training to become a director, I've been able to read this book, and it's become one of my favorite books. So before I started reading this book, there's an assessment at the very back of this book, and when I took that assessment, it would give me my basic scores. And so once I finished reading the book, I took the assessment again, and for those scores, it shows an increase or a decrease of those scores, and mine went up for the most part, and then my highest scores were the self-awareness and the self-management pillars. Some of the main things that stood out to me in this chapter is the fact that it talks about how you can't lead others without leading yourself first. And so with that, you have to be very self-aware. And so one of the main things that I focused on when I was going through this chapter was journaling my emotions. I think when you have a journal and you're able to journal those different days and things like that, you're able to look back on them, and it's paper trail. The fourth pillar of emotional intelligence is relationship management, and the two main takeaways that I pulled from this one was when you care, show it, and also acknowledging the other person's feelings. And so for me, I've never been a verbal person with how I feel. It's always been a tough thing for me to verbalize how I'm feeling towards somebody or a situation, but I've realized through my leadership growth that when you care and you show that you care, it really builds relationships with your team and other people. So I started reading Atomic Habits, and throughout reading this book, I've learned that when you build habits and you maintain those habits, you're able to free up some mental energy to live in the moment. And you're not worrying about what's next or what do I have to do in 2 hours, 2 minutes. The Emotional Intelligence book is actually one of my favorite books, and it's just because I've learned so much in this book that I didn't realize that I even needed to learn about myself, about my surroundings, about how my relationships depend on me and what I do to pour into those relationships. And I've told so many people that I've gotten more out of this book than I've gotten in therapy. So the third pillar of emotional intelligence is social awareness, and this is not one that I thought I needed to work on until I started reading through the book. And my main takeaways from this is to plan ahead for social gatherings and also to live in the moment. So both of these kind of go together. I've started reading another book called Atomic Habits, and I've realized that when you build those habits and you maintain those habits, get in a habit of doing those things, you're able to take some mental energy. I don't know what I'm saying. Hold on.
I love that. I love that. That's real raw feedback from emotional intelligence from Miranda, who's actually on the call today.
Yeah, so I think we've come to the Q&A portion of this presentation. So I want to ask you guys to unmute your mics. We've already established that most of you guys are not going to turn your cameras on, but if I would ask that if you are at least comfortable with interacting with us verbally, and if you're not comfortable interacting with us verbally, you can definitely respond to us in the chat. So I've been taking notes. I think one good thing for us to do as coaching is to take our own advice. And so during these presentations, if I'm not presenting, I'm taking notes and I'm trying to get better because I'm trying to learn. And there's a few things that jumped off the page for me. And again, you guys, I want to know what you guys' feedback on this is. So Nev opened up talking about social awareness, and one thing that really stuck out to me when we was talking about body language. For those of you out there, you'll put a 1 in the chat if you feel like you are good at reading other people's body language as it relates to being able to understand their communication, how they are truly perceiving things. Because I know Neff said this is that people are saying words, but you're looking for those other pieces of the equation to really hear and understand what they're going. And the thing that I wrote down on here is that body language goes both ways. This is something that I think I personally have to be more aware of, particularly my facial expressions. And I would think my facial expressions coincide with body language. And you agree? All right, I definitely think that my facial expressions are something that I can work on. So thank you guys. Thank you so much, Neff, for kind of highlighting that in your deal. Does anybody else have anything to add to that? Nayeli or Jen or Miranda or Judith to that? If not, we'll move on. So relationship management was the next piece. And I think this is something that I do that Javonna gave out as a secret, is that finding that one thing in common with everybody you work with. It is a fact that you cannot go 6 or 7 layers deep with 190 people, 200 people. It's really, really difficult to do. But if you focus on finding one thing, I think that one thing definitely helps. Sports, as Javonna mentioned, music, movies. I know I talk to people about basketball, football all the time. We talk about Marvel movies, and music is really big right now. I mean, super big right now amongst the people that I talk to music about, right? So it's just one of those things where you try to find that connection. It is huge. Acknowledging the other person's feelings. Javonna talked about that. When you care, show it. I think that's something I definitely can work on too. I do take on the assumption that, hey, we're all here just working. Why is there any need for additional care or additional praise? But as Javonna mentioned so well, that it is a necessity that we do those things. And so I hope you guys had a chance to write down those 6 ways to tackle hard conversations. And if you didn't, I'm going to go through them really quickly. Number 1 is to get into agreement, or to have an agreement, rather, a small statement that kind of just establishes what we're trying to get accomplished. Number 2, let's see here. Ask the person, do they understand your side? Ask the person to understand your side. And Javonna, you can correct me if I'm messing these up. Number 3, resist the urge to rebuttal. That's something I just, it's almost just in me to rebuttal. So that's definitely an area of opportunity for me, for sure. Make sure that you understand the person's perspective, and communicate clearly. Let's see here. Move the conversation forward. That's number 5. And then number 6, and I think I'm so glad you talked about this, Javonna, is that keep in touch component. I think that's something that a lot of us as leaders, we have conversations and we think it's all cool and we don't need to go back in and touch in and follow up and have that, pick that phone up or send that text message out. So that was all really, 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 really good stuff as it relates to the third and fourth pillar of emotional intelligence. And so does anybody out there have any other questions that they want to have for either myself or Javonna, Neff, Ashley? You can put that in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself. If you don't have anything to say, you can just put a 2 in the chat, and then we'll move forward. Disregard those balloons, by the way.
That's what I was saying. Alex is throwing a party. He put some balloons out there. I cannot get my screen to do that. I've tried. It doesn't work. But Alex always has.
Alex got the magic touch.
Yeah.
All right, so that it will conclude our Lead Better. Hopefully you guys got something out of this. Again, we do this every month. April might look a little different, so be on the lookout for what that may look like as it relates to how we go about doing our Lead Better. We will release what the topic will be for next month's Lead Better pretty soon. I want to just say a special thank you and shout out to Javonna and Neff for really holding it down these last 2 Lead Betters, as in terms of just anchoring the conversation. Huge shout out to Ashley. Like, y'all don't understand what we're looking at the back office side of this and just seeing, like, going from one thing to the other thing and time stamping this. And so everybody here is making this look very easy. And I feel more than fortunate to be able to work with these guys, because they have really made this event turnkey. And I think the content that's shared is incredible. And so, Ashley, you had something you wanted to add.
Oh, I was just, if any of y'all are in our spaces, the Leader Square group, just you can look on our website, tpe.com, and we can add you to that group as well.
Yeah, definitely want to add you to. We have Leader Square, which is all of us post in there periodically. And then we also have TPE Espanol, if that's something you want to take advantage of. Neff is doing a great job of keeping the content going there. I try to get in there every now and then with my limited abilities and limited things that I could do to try to help add value there. And so most of you guys, and typically that's just, I guess I'll be transparent here because the audience is a little different. Typically we offer, we close out and then we offer coaching, but I'm going to say I know at least 50% of you guys currently participate in some form of coaching already. The only person that doesn't participate in coaching, there might be some additional opportunities that we can talk about away from this from a TPE Espanol standpoint, because that might look a little different, and the offer might be articulated a little bit better from someone else. So I'll have we'll try to connect you guys off book here. But if there's nothing else, guys, we're going to go ahead and close out. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and joining us. We've enjoyed closing out this section on emotional intelligence, and I can't wait to connect to you guys again. Share this broadcast with someone. We'll share this opportunity with somebody who you think could benefit from it, who you think can grow from it. I definitely know that even though I've been with Chick-fil-A or the world's most caring company for 20 years. I learn things when I'm in these settings. There's something that's always said, and I talk to these guys all the time, and they always amaze me when we get into these arenas, the things that they bring to the table in terms of helping me become a better leader. So if you know other people out there that can benefit from this, please invite them to join us next time. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll catch up with you later.
Thank you so much for tuning into the replay of this session. We hope to have added value to your leadership journey. Please feel free to subscribe to our podcast on your podcast apps and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you all so much for joining us.